Maria was like sunshine in Tony's Italian restaurant. Every morning, before the smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the air, Maria would be there, humming softly as she swept the floors. She wasn't just a cleaning lady, she was part of the family. The tables gleamed under her touch and the dusty corners seemed to sparkle after she'd worked her magic. More than that, it was her smile that brightened the place. She always had a kind word for everyone, from Tony the owner to Marco the grumpy chef. Even the customers loved her. They'd often stop to chat, complimenting her on how clean and welcoming the restaurant always felt. Maria worked hard, supporting herself with a quiet dignity. She lived in a small apartment above the bakery, always saving her money carefully. She didn't have much family and often spent holidays alone, but she never complained. She found joy in the simple things, a good book, a sunny day, and the friendly faces at Tony's. Tony appreciated Maria more than words could say. He knew she was the heart of his restaurant, the silent force that kept everything running smoothly. He saw her dedication, her kindness, and her quiet strength. He knew her life wasn't easy, and he always tried to show his appreciation in small ways, a bonus now and then, or a warm cup of coffee on a cold morning. He knew she deserved more than just a thank you, she deserved to be celebrated. As Tony finalized the wedding plans with his soon-to-be wife, Sophia, a pang of guilt struck him. The guest list was long, filled with family and friends, but he couldn't shake the thought of Maria. He knew she didn't have many people in her life and would likely spend the wedding day alone. He pictured Maria in her small apartment, perhaps reading a book while he celebrated his joy with loved ones. The image tugged at his heart. It just didn't seem right. "Sophia," he said one evening as they addressed invitations, "I want to invite Maria to the wedding." Sophia, a kind and understanding woman, raised an eyebrow. "Maria? The cleaning lady?" "Yes," Tony replied, feeling a bit nervous. "She's practically family. She works so hard and she's always so cheerful. I know she doesn't have many people and I think it would mean a lot to her." Sophia smiled warmly. "That's a lovely idea, Tony. I think it's wonderful that you're thinking of her. Of course, she can come." Relief washed over Tony. He grabbed another invitation and quickly scribbled Maria's name on it. It wasn't fancy, but it was heartfelt. He couldn't wait to tell her. He imagined her surprised face, her grateful smile. He knew it would make her day, and that thought made him even happier about his upcoming wedding. It felt good to share his joy with someone who deserved it so much. The next morning, Tony found Maria polishing the silverware with extra care. He took a deep breath and approached her. "Maria," he began, "I have something I want to ask you." He held out the invitation. Maria took it with trembling hands. Her eyes widened as she read the words, "You are invited to celebrate the wedding of Tony and Sophia." A gasp escaped her lips. "Tony," she said, her voice thick with emotion, this is so kind." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away with the back of her hand. I don't know what to say." Tony smiled. "Just say you'll come. It wouldn't be the same without you." Maria nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, I'll come. I wouldn't miss it for the world." A wave of happiness washed over her. She felt seen, appreciated, and truly valued. It was more than just an invitation, it was a gesture of belonging. As Tony walked away, Maria clutched the invitation to her chest. She couldn't stop smiling. A wedding. It had been years since she'd attended one. Now the exciting question was, what would she wear? She didn't have many fancy clothes, but she was determined to find something special to celebrate Tony's happiness. She started picturing all the dresses in the shop windows and began planning a shopping trip after work. This was going to be wonderful. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activity. Tony was a bundle of nervous energy, juggling seating charts, flower arrangements, and last-minute catering details. Despite the stress, he was undeniably happy, his face beaming whenever he talked about marrying Sophia. He'd often catch Maria's eye across the restaurant and give her a grateful nod, appreciating her quiet support amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, Maria embarked on her own special mission, finding the perfect dress. She visited several shops, carefully examining the sale racks, her eyes searching for something elegant yet affordable. Finally, in a small boutique tucked away on a side street, she found it. It was a simple, knee-length dress in a soft shade of blue with delicate lace detailing around the neckline. When she tried it on, she gasped. It fit perfectly, accentuating her figure and making her feel radiant. It wasn't flashy or expensive, but it was beautiful and it made her feel beautiful too. She carefully purchased the dress, knowing she'd made the right choice. She couldn't wait to wear it to Tony's wedding, feeling confident and ready to celebrate his special day. She also bought a new pair of shoes. simple but elegant, and practiced walking in them in her apartment, excited for the big day. The sun shone brightly on Tony's wedding day. Maria woke up early, her heart filled with anticipation. She carefully laid out her blue dress and took extra time getting ready, styling her hair and adding a touch of makeup. As she looked in the mirror, she smiled. She felt ready. When she arrived at the beautiful church, Maria couldn't help but feel a little out of place. Guests in fancy dresses and sharp suits mingled, their laughter and chatter filling the air. She recognized a few faces from the restaurant, but mostly, she was surrounded by people she didn't know. She found a seat near the back, trying to be discreet. She felt a little shy amongst the fancier crowd, but the joy she felt for Tony outweighed her nervousness. She was truly happy for him and Sophia and excited to witness their special moment. She reminded herself that Tony had personally invited her and that she deserved to be there. Despite feeling a bit like an outsider, Maria focused on the beauty of the surroundings, the flowers, the music, and the palpable sense of love in the air. She couldn't wait to see Tony's face when he saw Sophia walking down the aisle. She knew it would be a beautiful moment and she was honored to be a part of it. She just hoped she wouldn't cry too much. The music swelled as the wedding ceremony began. First, the bridesmaids walked gracefully down the aisle, followed by the groomsmen. Then, a handsome man with kind eyes and a warm smile began his walk. Maria recognized him as David, Sophia's brother, who was standing in for her deceased father and giving her away. As David passed her pew, Maria's breath hitched in her throat. Something about his face, his posture, it stirred a long-dormant memory deep within her. She felt a strange pull, a sense of recognition that she couldn't quite place. Her heart began to pound in her chest. She felt dizzy and confused. Her face paled slightly and she gripped the pew in front of her for support. She told herself it was nothing, just a trick of the light, a fleeting resemblance to someone she once knew. But the feeling persisted, a nagging unease that settled in the pit of her stomach. She hadn't seen David before, really, only in pictures Tony had shown her of Sophia's family. She tried to shake it off, to focus on the upcoming entrance of the bride, but the image of David's face lingered in her mind, clouding her joy with a strange, unsettling feeling. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was somehow connected to her past, a past she had tried so hard to bury. David reached the altar, a picture of calm and composure. He turned to face the congregation, his eyes scanning the rows of smiling faces. He was searching for Sophia, ready to give her a reassuring nod before she began her walk. His gaze swept across the room, and then it stopped. His eyes locked onto Maria, sitting quietly near the back. The smile vanished from his face. His body stiffened. He froze. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale and trembling slightly. His eyes widened in shock, disbelief, and a flicker of something that looked like fear. He stared at Maria, unable to look away. The air seemed to thicken around him, and the joyous atmosphere of the wedding dissolved into a tense, silent standoff. He knew her. He knew her very well, though he hadn't seen her in decades. The cheerful organ music faded into background noise as David's mind raced. He couldn't believe it. What was she doing here? This couldn't be happening. His carefully constructed world was threatening to crumble before his very eyes. He felt like he was going to be sick. Tony, standing nervously at the altar awaiting his bride, noticed David's odd behavior. He saw David's face drain of color and his rigid posture. He frowned, concerned. "David?" Tony whispered, nudging him gently. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." David didn't respond immediately. He blinked as if snapping out of a trance and turned to Tony, his eyes still wide with a mixture of fear and urgency. "Tony," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the soft organ music. I need to talk to you. In private. Now." He emphasized the last word, his grip tightening on Tony's arm. Tony was completely bewildered. What could possibly be so urgent that it couldn't wait until after the ceremony? Sophia was about to walk down the aisle any minute. But the intensity in David's eyes told him this was no small matter. "What is it, David?" Tony asked, his own anxiety rising. "What's wrong?" David shook his head, his gaze darting nervously towards Maria. "I can't explain it here," he hissed. "Just trust me. We need to talk. Now." His voice was so urgent that Tony knew he had to listen. Whatever it was clearly something serious. He looked at the entrance where Sophia would soon appear, then back at David's desperate face. He knew he had a difficult choice to make. With a deep breath, Tony reluctantly nodded. He signaled to the priest that there would be a slight delay and followed David to a small side room off the sanctuary. Sophia was due to walk down the aisle any second. Once they were alone, David turned to Tony, his face pale and etched with worry. "Tony, you're not going to believe this," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "That woman? Maria. She's my mother." Tony stared at him, dumbfounded. "Maria? Your mother? What are you talking about? You've never mentioned." I know, David interrupted, running a hand through his hair. "It's a long story, but the truth is I haven't seen her since I was a baby. She gave me up for adoption when she was very young and struggling. I always knew I was adopted and I had a wonderful family, but I never knew who my birth mother was until now." He gestured weakly, indicating the direction of the sanctuary. Tony was speechless. Maria, the kind, gentle cleaning lady, was David's estranged mother? It was an unbelievable coincidence, a plot twist worthy of a movie. He couldn't imagine what Maria must be feeling or what this revelation meant for Sophia and their wedding day. This was far more complicated than he could have ever imagined. Sophia was about to walk down the aisle. Flashback. Years ago, Maria was a young woman, barely out of her teens. She had big dreams, but life had dealt her a difficult hand. She found herself alone and pregnant, struggling to make ends meet. She worked tirelessly as a waitress, her small income barely covering the rent for her tiny apartment. When David was born, Maria loved him fiercely. He was her whole world, her reason for getting up each morning. But she knew she couldn't give him the life he deserved. She couldn't afford proper food, clothing, or education. She wanted him to have more, to have a chance at a brighter future. With a heavy heart, she made the most difficult decision of her life. She contacted an adoption agency, hoping to find a loving family who could provide David with everything she couldn't. It tore her apart to think of giving him up, but she believed it was the right thing to do. She chose a wonderful couple who promised to love and care for David as their own. She held him one last time, whispering promises of eternal love before handing him over. It was a moment that would haunt her forever, a sacrifice she made out of love and desperation. After that day, she moved away and tried to build a new life, always carrying the memory of her son in her heart. End flashback. Tony was reeling. He couldn't process the magnitude of what David had just told him. "David, I don't know what to say," he stammered, his mind racing. He thought of Sophia, waiting patiently to walk down the aisle, completely unaware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes. "We need to tell her," David said, his voice filled with anxiety. "We need to tell Sophia." "Not now," Tony insisted, his voice firm. "Sophia is about to walk down the aisle. We can't ruin her wedding day with this. It's too much to handle right now." David looked torn, but he understood. He ran a hand through his hair again, visibly agitated. "But what are we going to do?" "We're going to get through the ceremony," Tony said, trying to project an air of calm he didn't feel. "And then, after the vows, after everything is official, you can talk to Maria. Explain everything to her. But not before. Please, David, for Sophia's sake, just wait." David hesitated, but finally nodded in agreement. He knew Tony was right. Ruining Sophia's wedding wasn't an option. He would wait, as difficult as it would be, and then he would finally confront his past. Tony patted David on the shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. "It's going to be okay," he said, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. The wedding ceremony resumed, but the joyous atmosphere had been tainted. Sophia, radiant in her white dress, finally walked down the aisle, her face beaming with happiness as she took Tony's hand. But even as Tony smiled back, his mind was elsewhere, replaying David's shocking revelation. David, standing beside him, was visibly distracted. He kept glancing at Maria, his expression a mixture of guilt, fear, and longing. He struggled to focus on the vows, his mind consumed by the thought of finally meeting his mother after all these years. Maria, still seated near the back, noticed David's discomfort. She saw him fidgeting, his eyes darting around the room, avoiding eye contact. She wondered if she had done something to offend him. Had she unknowingly broken some unspoken wedding etiquette? A wave of insecurity washed over her. Perhaps Tony had only invited her out of pity. Perhaps she didn't belong here after all. She tried to brush aside the negative thoughts, reminding herself to focus on Tony and Sophia's happiness. But David's strange behavior made it difficult to shake the feeling that she was an unwelcome guest. She hoped she hadn't ruined anything by coming. Maybe she should have just stayed home. As soon as Tony and Sophia were pronounced husband and wife, David knew he couldn't delay any longer. He excused himself from the receiving line, his heart pounding in his chest. He spotted Maria sitting alone, still near the back, and took a deep breath before approaching her. He felt like a nervous teenager on his first date. He rehearsed what he wanted to say in his head, but the words seemed inadequate, clumsy. How do you approach a woman you haven't seen since you were a baby and tell her you think she's your mother? His palms were sweating, and his throat felt dry. He could feel Tony watching him from across the room, offering a silent nod of encouragement. He swallowed hard and forced himself to walk towards Maria. He stood before her, unsure of what to do. Should he offer his hand? Should he hug her? He decided to start with words, the simplest and most direct approach. But even those seemed to fail him. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He was suddenly acutely aware of the years that separated them, the lost time, the unspoken emotions. He felt overwhelmed, terrified, and desperately hopeful all at once. He was completely and utterly lost for words. Clearing his throat, David finally managed to speak, his voice a little shaky. "Excuse me, Maria? I don't believe we've officially met. I'm David, Sophia's brother." He extended his hand, trying to appear casual, but his nervousness was palpable. Maria looked up at him, surprised. "Oh, hello, David," she replied, taking his hand and offering a polite smile. "It's nice to finally meet you too. Tony has shown me pictures of you." She wondered why he seemed so uneasy. David's grip was brief, and he quickly withdrew his hand. "I wanted to, well, I felt like there might be something, a connection, perhaps? It's difficult to explain." He stumbled over his words, trying to hint at their shared past without revealing the whole truth too abruptly. Maria frowned, puzzled. "A connection? I'm not sure I understand." She racked her brain, trying to recall if she had ever met David before. He seemed familiar somehow, but she couldn't place it. "Have we met before?" "I don't think so." Despite her confusion, Maria remained polite and attentive. She sensed that David was trying to say something important, and she was willing to listen even if she didn't understand what he was getting at. She was still a little insecure from his behavior during the ceremony, but she wanted to be kind and welcoming. "Is everything all right, David?" she asked gently. "You seem a little stressed." Taking a deep breath and deciding that he couldn't dance around the issue any longer, David blurted out the words that had been swirling in his mind. "Maria, I think you might be my mother." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken emotion and decades of lost time. Maria's eyes widened in disbelief. The blood drained from her face, leaving her pale and shaken. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. The room seemed to spin around her, the sounds of the wedding fading into a distant hum. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. 1,000 memories flooded her mind, the pain of giving him up, the years of wondering about him, the secret hope that someday, somehow, they would meet again. She stared at David, really seeing him for the first time. She saw a glimmer of herself in his kind eyes, a hint of her own smile in his gentle expression. Could it be true? Could this handsome, successful man really be the baby she had given up so many years ago? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was completely overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions, shock, disbelief, hope, and a profound sense of longing. All she could do was stare at David, tears streaming down her face, her heart aching with a mixture of joy and sorrow. Her whole body trembled. Finally, gathering her composure, Maria spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, David," she whispered, her eyes locking with his. "I am your mother." The confession hung in the air, releasing a torrent of unspoken feelings. Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to explain her difficult decision. "I was so young, so alone," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I wanted so much for you, but I couldn't provide it. I thought giving you up was the best thing, the only thing I could do to give you a good life." She reached out, her hand hovering hesitantly near his face. "I never stopped loving you, not for a single day," she confessed, her voice thick with regret. "I always wondered where you were, if you were happy, if you ever thought of me." Her eyes searched his, pleading for understanding. "I know it was a terrible thing to do, and I've regretted it every day since," she said, her voice barely audible. "But I want you to know that I did it out of love, a desperate, selfless love for you." She was terrified that he would hate her, that he would never forgive her for the choice she had made. But she had to tell him the truth to finally unburden herself after all these years. "You were always in my heart," she whispered. David was overwhelmed by Maria's confession. He saw the pain in her eyes, the weight of her regret. He finally understood the sacrifice she had made, the love that had motivated her decision. His heart softened with compassion and forgiveness. He reached out, his hand meeting hers. "I understand," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I understand why you did what you did. You wanted the best for me, and I appreciate that." He stood up and pulled Maria into a warm embrace. It was a long, heartfelt embrace, a silent acknowledgement of the years they had lost and the bond that had remained unbroken despite the distance. Tears flowed freely from both of them. Tears of sorrow, relief, and finally, of joy. In that moment, the wedding faded into the background. The only thing that mattered was the connection between mother and son. A connection that had been severed for too long but was now, finally, restored. It was a reunion filled with love, forgiveness, and the promise of a future together. David finally felt like a piece of himself that had been missing for his entire life had been found. From across the room, Tony watched the reunion unfold, tears streaming down his own face. He saw the raw emotion, the heartfelt embrace, the unspoken connection between mother and son. He realized the incredible impact of his simple invitation and act of kindness that had set in motion a chain of events that had led to this extraordinary moment. He had simply wanted to make Maria feel included, to share his joy with someone who deserved it. He had never imagined that his gesture would reunite a mother and son after decades of separation, healing old wounds and forging a new bond. He felt a surge of gratitude, not just for the happy ending he was witnessing, but for the reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can have profound and far-reaching consequences. It reminded him of the importance of compassion, of looking beyond the surface and recognizing the humanity in everyone, regardless of their background or circumstances. He wiped away his tears and smiled, his heart filled with warmth. He knew that this wedding day, already special for him and Sophia, would now be forever etched in his memory as the day a family was reunited, all thanks to a simple invitation and a little bit of kindness. He felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. Sophia, having just been announced as Tony's wife, noticed the commotion and approached, her brow furrowed with concern. "Tony, what's going on?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. "Why is everyone so upset?" Tony gently took her hand and led her aside, explaining the incredible events that had just transpired. He told her about David's discovery, Maria's heartbreaking story, and their emotional reunion. Sophia listened intently, her eyes widening in disbelief. She was initially confused and a little overwhelmed, but her kind heart quickly took over. She understood the significance of the moment and the profound impact it would have on her brother's life. She walked over to Maria and David, offering them a warm smile. "David," she said, embracing her brother, "I'm so happy for you. This is amazing." She then turned to Maria, extending her hand. "Maria, welcome to the family. I'm so glad you're here." Her genuine warmth and acceptance eased the tension in the room. Her welcoming gesture brought tears to Maria's eyes once again. Sophia's love for her brother and her kind spirit made her instantly accepting of Maria. She felt like her family was truly complete. Now she had a mother and a sister. It was the best wedding present she could have asked for. The wedding reception transformed into a celebration of family, forgiveness, and unexpected connections. The initial shock and tension gave way to an atmosphere of warmth and joy. Guests who had been strangers moments before now mingled and shared stories, united by the extraordinary event they had witnessed. Tony and Sophia, beaming with happiness, danced their first dance as husband and wife, surrounded by their loved ones. But the most touching moment came when David, with a gentle smile, led Maria onto the dance floor. As they swayed to the music, their faces lit up with pure joy. Maria, in her simple blue dress, looked radiant, her eyes sparkling with happiness. David held her close, finally feeling complete, the missing piece of his heart now firmly in place. It was a moment of profound healing, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the enduring strength of family bonds. The wedding, which had started with a simple invitation and a moment of frozen recognition, had become something far more meaningful, a celebration of love, family, and the unexpected ways in which life can surprise and connect us. From that day forward, Maria was no longer just the cleaning lady at Tony's restaurant, she was family. And David was no longer just Sophia's brother, he was a son, finally reunited with his mother, ready to embrace a future filled with love and connection.